Jim's at Coromandel Valley. Hi, Jim.
Oh, g'day there, Andrew. How are you, mate?
Good, Jim. How are you?
Oh, yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I was listening to a few of your earlier callers, and I didn't really want to make this call to you tonight, but I've been trying to avoid this topic with you.
Why? What's up? What's up?
Oh, I just want to talk about. I have infinite knowledge of Ukraine and that part of the world, with my wife being Eastern European and travelled there many times, and I just think that everybody's got caught up with one side of the story with the old mainstream media, and I just like to say that it's not what it seems in terms of that situation, what's happening over there.
Well, tell me.
Well, there's a few things. It dates back to 2014, where free and transparent elections were denied to the Ukrainian people with the help of NATO and the US government. Another interesting fact is when we get told that the world is against Russia and everybody's sanctioning Russia, that's another mistruth. If you look at the map geographically, just picture a picture of the world, and you highlight the countries that have actually placed sanctions on Russia, you will immediately see that it's less than 30% of the world that is actually placing sanctions on Russia and is against Russia. There is nobody in Africa that is sanctioning Russia. There is nobody apart from Japan in the Asian continent that is sanctioning Russia. If you look closer to the war zone in Europe, there's countries, i.e. Serbia, Hungary, Turkey, Belarus, so on and so forth, that have not placed any sanctions on Russia. And I believe that it's, that the Americans and NATO, through NATO, which is an arm of the American might, power. Yeah,
well, it's part of the North Atlantic Treaty,
I believe they don't care how many Ukrainians they send to their death. And this is also evident by we're contact with in my missus's town at the moment. They've taken a lot of refugees there. Ukraine is only allowing the women and children and the elderly to be evacuated. And Russia is providing safe passage for that. The question is, what's happening to all the men? And we know firsthand that the men are not allowed to accompany their wives or they are being forced to stay and fight.
Yeah, that's right.
Against their will, and if they refuse to fight against their Russian, they're shot in the back. So what you're seeing now is America and Australia and all of the Western alliance providing military aid and sending people to their death.
We would be hearing about that if that was the case, because we live in a world of social media, and
it's all over social media.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's all over the non-MSN platforms, i.e. Telegram, Signal, all of the other messaging apps. It's all over there. It's quite easy to find that out. I know this information firsthand, like I said, because my wife is from Bulgaria, and there is a girl who I've actually met on previous trips called Svetla, and she's come now permanently to live with the grandma, and she's telling us this. And,
we hear that it's the Russians who are shooting the Ukrainians and civilians.
The Russians are shooting the Ukrainians and the civilians, are they?
Yeah, that's what the news is saying.
Well, I know what the news is saying also, and I'm offering a different perspective, and I'm challenging anybody.
And I'm just
free thinking enough to find out for themselves.
Well, the information is it's the Russians that are doing it. Why would the Ukrainians be shooting their own people in the back?
Okay, I can tell you another story firsthand from the battlefield. When the war first started, and we started to see these horrific pictures about civilian death and civilian casualties plastered all over our televisions, One of these stories that I heard, once again, firsthand from that part of the world, was that the Ukrainian military was going into residential blocks. Now, over there, everybody lives in apartment-style blocks left over from the communist era. So they were evacuating everybody from these residential blocks, and they were saying to them, okay, go to the 5th floor of the building, which is a central location in the building, right? And they were saying that's where you'll be safe. You'll be most safe there. All the residents go to these strategic apartment blocks that they'd take over as positions. Then, once everybody was secured in these middle floors of these residential apartments, they would send in the ground floors the tanks, the artillery positions, and then they would go to the roofs of the apartment buildings and set up the US provided Javelin missiles. Then they would open fire towards the Russian front. The Russian front would respond with more return fire because they would identify that is a Ukrainian position, and all those people would be killed. And there is countless stories of this going on. So what I'm trying to say is that there's two sides to every story. The way I best like to describe this conflict is if your neighbour, Andrew, where you live, wherever you live, your neighbour, you had a Barney with him for many years, and he decided to get even with you. So what he did was he set up a tripod with a hunting rifle and a scope and pointed it in your lounge room window. And how long would it take for you to have enough of that situation? And that's exactly what America is doing to the Russians on their border, using Ukraine as a proxy.
The difficulty with any war and coverage of war and getting information out is the old adage, the first casualty of war is truth, and knowing what is true and what is not true.
Yeah. And can I also just say that it's no intention of Russia to start spreading through Europe and taking Poland, and like I've heard, and all these talks. And this is no intention. This is aimed to a demilitarization of that zone that is so close to Russia. And you look at who's poking the bear. You think it's really your poor little Ukrainian people with this actor of a president telling all this how tough guy he is to everybody, telling everybody to go and fight, making the men stay, arming them, and saying that's what you have to do. If you don't, we'll shoot you in the back. Do you really think it's that, or do you think that it's another Iraq war or another Vietnam war or another American interference because they're losing grip that they once had on the world? And it's coming. It's coming. It's about bringing down the empire, and I think America's days are numbered. And unfortunately, being Australia, we might have we don't have a dog in that fight. That's the first thing. But we do exactly what America says we should do, and I think we are going to be on the wrong side of history this time.
All right, Jim, look after yourself.
No worries. Take it easy.
All right, you take care too. It's 29 minutes after 11 now here on 1395 at